One of those topics that we get all the time, especially when it comes to image quality, brightness, things like that, is about projection, which is what our next conversation is about. We've got a couple great folks over from Barco over here. We've got Domien and Wouter. Thanks so much for coming on the show, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Glad to be here.
Look, my first introduction to the Barco ecosystem was through the projection and display and show control side, which is one of a handful of different verticals. But we're talking obviously specifically about projection today. So really as a whole in the display side, what are some of the ways, Domien, we'll start with you. What are some of the ways that you've seen that world evolve even in the last 2-3 years?
Yeah, so we've seen projection really taking off, really growing at very strong levels across the markets. Both on the Pro AV side, event side, simulation side, also on the cinema side. We've seen the growth being driven by mapping applications. So people are not just looking at the visual experience, but are really in the experience. And that's something we've seen driving the growth across the world and bringing that wow experience to many visitors and patrons around the globe. Yeah.
And to add to that, I think what we've seen as well from technology, and it was mentioned in the video, is like the rise of resolutions. Things get more immersive. People get closer to the screen, right? So resolutions ramp up very fast. Projectors need to follow. Processing needs to follow. So for us, just bringing the next generation of technology without breaking the bank, without doubling the cost, that's the main, I would say, main priority for the projection industry. Yeah.
Wonderful. And as a leader in projection and processing technology, what emerging trends do you believe that's going to shape the next generation of visual experiences?
Yeah, so I think there's a few. I think people always like to be entertained. They like to know what is the best visual wow. So you expect pictures to be even more vivid, be sharper. So people are really in the immersive experience, but also have a very sharp, intense experience. I think another thing we'll see will be more driven by less technically skilled labor in many geographies. So a lot of things will become easier, and we'll make much more use of software to enable that easiness. I think some of the mega trends we also see are around sustainability. So climate change is everywhere, right? So impacting both regulations, but also customer demand, right? We cannot just let the planet grow in temperatures, so we also have to play our role as an AV industry from that aspect. And of course, there's many things which happen in technology in other industries around us, cloud-based opportunities, AV over IP opportunities, which move into our industry, and I think it's really our role as manufacturers to bring the value to the AV industry as a result.
Well, Wouter, one of the things that we've seen over the last probably 5 to 10 years is what I'll call the renaissance of the projector, right? We mentioned mapping technologies, we talked about immersive experiences, whether that's because of increases in brightness, resolution, like we spoke about. What are some of the things that you're seeing continue to advance and drive that renaissance of the projector?
Well, one thing, the beautiful thing about projection is you can project on anything, on any surface, right? And you see when it comes down to like the experience for the spectator, for the audience, you have to become more creative. If you want to get your story across, you have to be more creative. So the fact that you can use anything is a main driver to use projection technology. And then on top of that, projection technology by nature is very efficient. In terms of a sustainability point of view, it's very efficient. And the third thing I would say for the ergonomic aspect of it, the eye fatigue, it's very easy to look on a projection screen. So all of this together makes actually I would say the rise of projection coming back way more than I would say 5 years ago, where there was a big shift towards LED. I would say these are the three main elements that are driving that from my side.
And I know we've spoken a bit about sustainability. So are there any initiatives that Barco has in order to address sustainability in your product?
Yeah, so I think first of all, it's important as Barco, as a company, we subscribe to the net zero strategy. So that's really a company-wide strategy, which of course has implications on all the roadmaps, all the products we bring to the market. For projection specifically, we would be looking into modularity, we would be looking into remote connectivity, but I think the most important thing is really making the transition and pushing the transition, be at the forefront, to go from lamp-based projection to laser-based projection. I think that actually drives a lot of the waste, it drives a lot of the power efficiency. Actually, as an industry, I think we can actually save out the nuclear power plants in energy and really save on the sustainability side. On top of that, the laser technology also allows the experience to be much more consistent. By definition, you have a much more consistent output, which again helps our customers and moviegoers or patrons or visitors to, when they pay for an expensive ticket, they're sure they get a guaranteed very good visual experience they go to.
And perhaps one thing I want to add here is because when in the industry, when we talk about sustainability, we often look at the product. We look at the energy efficiency of the product, whether it's projection or something else. I think a fundamental aspect of sustainability in the industry is looking at how we do business, how do we do shows, how do we set up a museum, whatever it is. I think we are transporting a lot of goods every weekend. We are transporting whole crews every weekend. And I think thinking about how you can optimize that has an equal impact from a sustainability point of view. So remote crews, making sure you can put certain gear to the cloud, all of that stuff, for us as Barco, it's fundamental in driving sustainability beyond just the product itself.
Well, look, last question here, and I'll ask this to the both of you. You know, one of the things we battle in the AV industry is what I'll call good enough syndrome, right? Where something works and it functions and it's okay, right? But you talk about the life cycle of a projector, it's usually probably 10, 15 years, usually at most. We're hitting the back end of that life cycle. What are some of the things that you have to say to those people really who are looking to make some of those new decisions, whether it's in even verticals like hospitality, education, maybe outside of those traditional Pro AV verticals?
Yeah, so look, as a manufacturer, we want to offer choices, right? So if people want to sign into the latest and greatest, yes, we will cater for that. If people want to have support on, hey, how do we recycle all of this, we will cater for that. Even from a design perspective, we'd like to have things modular, so we can actually work on reusing components and really drive a more sustainable industry from the design perspective, right? But I think for us, it's hard to say this is what it has to be. I think it's really up to us to come with solutions that are both make sense from a business perspective, but also can make this industry a more sustainable industry.
And to add to that, I think for me, the advice I would give to all those people is, since you have just used a projector for the past 10 years, choose technology that will last again for 10 years, which means for me that think about resolution, that's obvious, but also think about the way of working. You talked about AV over IP yourself, it's a big thing. Invest in processors, projectors that are ready for that future. And I think that's not always the case in certain purchasing decisions. I think it's very important for whether it's in a school or a live event, think about the next 5 to 10 years when you make that decision.
Incredible insight, gentlemen. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. We appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Thanks for having us.